Back in March, I had this brilliant beyond brilliant idea, as the TikTok trend would say, about starting a classroom economy in my classroom. And over the next week or so, I just dove straight in head first, like I always do whenever I want to try something new, and planned out what this classroom economy was going to look like for me. So in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing what I did, what I learned, and what I'm not going to do next year. Let's get started. Welcome to Solving for the Undefined podcast. I'm your host, Johanna, founder of Miss Kuiper's Classroom, the place that equips teachers in creating a healthy math classroom where students can thrive, no matter their academic abilities. But it's not always about the numbers, and that's why I'm here, bringing you the formulas to solve your problems, math and otherwise, plus strategies on cultivating that necessary math mindset. And that's what you can count on. Hello, and welcome to episode 34. We are going to be taking a deep dive into classroom economies today. Now, if you're unsure what a classroom economy is, I'll save you the Googling trip and just tell you that a classroom economy is a program that enables teachers to help teach financial literacy and financial responsibility through fun and experiential learning. Or if you believe in PBIS, which is Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, this is a tool that you could use. So back in March, I found this YouTube video all about classroom economies, and it was a teacher implementing it in their high school, I think, social studies class. And he talked about how it just became this community and this family with the students, and how they really enjoyed having a purpose within the classroom that wasn't necessarily just a student role. And thinking about the year that I've had with behaviors in my classroom, I thought this would be a really great opportunity for my students to have a role and a job. I had also just taken a course from Grace Dearborn, who co-wrote the Conscious Classroom Management book. And in her workshop, she was talking about how when you have students who have high behaviors and you give them a purpose or a job, whether that's, oh, hey, will you take this envelope to the office? Or, hey, can you go grab the copies from the printer? Just that small task can show that you need that student, or that student has a purpose in the classroom and can build that relationship. So with those two things fresh in my mind, I was like, I am going to do this. And in typical Johanna fashion, I just dove in, researched everything I could, and created a plan all within a week or two of how I was going to do this. In my research, I came across 4 pillars, if you will, of things that a classroom economy needs to have: classroom jobs, rent and utilities, bonuses and fines, and a classroom store. And then I found a secret 5th pillar of I need a place to store all of this information and someone to run this, because that ain't gonna be me. Ironic, isn't it? So first thing I needed to do was figure out what kind of classroom jobs I want to have. Now, in my research, it is found that you want to make sure every student has a job. That way, everyone is involved in your classroom economy. But I had some classes of like 28 and 30. How was I supposed to come up with that many jobs? And I will tell you that some of the jobs that I created were unnecessary, but they got the job done. Literally. While I did end up creating about 28 to 30 jobs, I found that the most important ones were banker, teacher's assistant, messenger, bracket leader for the attendance bracket that we did, and attendance monitor. Now, the attendance monitor was a lifesaver because sometimes I would forget to take attendance, and I could confirm with the sheet that my attendance monitor used. Now, one thing I really enjoyed about having jobs for my students was that end of class time where there's 2 or 3 minutes before the bell rings. That time can be used for students to do their jobs. So they pack up, they do their jobs, and line up at the door. One thing I did not like is as time went on, students got very complacent in their jobs, and that's on me. But there wasn't enough intrinsic motivation for students to continue working on their jobs, even though they got paid to do them. So I think next year what I'm going to have is a manager or an office manager, make sure that students are doing their job, so that is not on me. I'm all about delegation. Moving into our second pillar, rent and utilities, or overall bills. This is the part where it makes that real world connections between I have a job where I get a paycheck and some of that money has to actually go to bills. So my students had to pay 2 bills, rent and utilities. So I made them pay rent on their desk and pay an internet utility fee. Now, of course, kids are like, but I move desks every day. How am I supposed to pay rent? Or can I just sit on the floor so I don't have to pay rent? And the same went for using computers and not having to pay the utilities bill. And I usually tell them, I appreciate your creativity, but when you're in this classroom, you have to pay rent because you are borrowing a desk every day. And just like in the real world, if students save up enough money, they can purchase their desk, meaning that every month they no longer have to pay rent. My goal was to make this as real world as possible. I wanted them to have a safe place to practice budgeting and get that experience with money. Now, one thing I enjoyed about having students pay rent and utilities and have the opportunity to buy their desk was it gave students a goal and a reason for why they had a job and why they got a paycheck. It's because they had to pay rent. And I know that's kind of a cyclical reasoning, but for my middle schoolers, it really did give them purpose. Now, one thing I did not like was I think I priced the rent and purchasing of their desk too low. Within a month, I had students already purchasing their desk, which doesn't necessarily simulate what a real world experience would be. So then I had to decide, can those students then buy someone else's desk? And that student then has to pay the purchasing student rent instead of me. And when I said yes, that became a whole bigger issue and deal for me to handle and remember who bought whose desk. Did they get their rent? If not, what do I do? It became too convoluted for me to then enjoy the classroom economy. So my steps for next year to improve this is 1, I am going to raise the rent and utility prices to be more real world level, because before I had rent at $100 and purchasing a desk at $250, I believe, maybe $300. But I want to change that to be more real world. So maybe rent is $1,500 a month. And then purchasing a desk is like $10,000. And with that, their paychecks would reflect the change in the economy. But overall, something needs to change to make it more realistic. Moving into our third pillar is bonuses and fines. The platform I use to host the classroom economy, which I'll talk about soon, had this thing called the 101 wheel. And on this wheel was a mixture of positive and negative things. So, sold something on Marketplace, fell for an internet scam, had a flat tire, won a raffle. But inside my classroom, I also did every day they attended, they got $1. If they got a 4 on an assessment, they would get $10. If they went above and beyond on their iReady minutes, so every 15 minutes was $5 more. You can see the bonuses that students would start getting for doing well in class. And for the fines, I didn't really do a whole lot with them. I had an unexcused tardy was -2. And obstruction of learning was -5. My students came up with that one, not me. But they really enjoyed calling out students being like, obstruction of learning, which quickly became a big thing. I had to shut it down. But in the moment, it was cool that students came up with something and owned the economy enough to want to then quote unquote fine people. I think the biggest thing within the bonuses and fines was I had something other than candy to offer students if they won a game or did something good. I had something other than sugar to give them. And the best part is making the classroom currency didn't cost me anything other than the time to design it. So it was pretty much a win-win situation. There wasn't necessarily a whole lot I liked about the bonuses and fines. I mostly enjoyed the 101 wheel, which had those different positive and negative real world things, and giving something students to work for that wasn't candy. Other than that, kind of moving into what I didn't like, is the bonuses and fines was a lot of work on my end. It was too much on top of everything I have to do as a teacher to then go in and make sure the students got their bonuses, they were fined for certain things, keeping track of all of that throughout the day. Too much, not worth it for me to do that. So what I'm going to do next year is poll each of my classes and see what they think. Do you like the bonuses and the fines? If so, what do you want them to be? Or maybe even have them create them themselves and then assign a job to keep track of those and enter them into our online program. I am interrupting today's episode to talk to you about the Reignite the Math Classroom Conference. The special thing about this self-paced conference is that it is professional development for math teachers by math teachers. With 9 professional development topics plus 3 bonus presenters, this conference is something you will not want to miss. When you purchase your ticket, you will get access to an exclusive Facebook group with other Reignite the Math Classroom students. Inside this group, each of our presenters will go live to answer any questions you have regarding their sessions. July 7th is going to come faster than you think, so go ahead and purchase your ticket now so you can start the process of reigniting your math classroom. And then this brings us to pillar number 4, the classroom store. Now, I wanted this to be something more than I have to buy things and my students can purchase this with this fake money from our classroom economy. I had seen my mom as a teacher once a quarter for them put together this elaborate store of things that she found at the Dollar Tree, the dollar section at Target when it was still everything was $1. And while that was beautiful and as a student I would have loved that, that is not in my current budget. So I needed to come up with things that I could put in the classroom store that had very little, if any, monetary value from me. While I did not come up with a lot of things, here are some of the things that I had. I had a music pass so students could listen to music during independent work time, emphasis on independent work time. I had a bathroom/hall pass, and then I also had a choose your own seat pass. And of those 3, the bathroom pass is the one that got purchased the most. And I know I said I didn't buy anything with my own money to support this classroom store. I did purchase snacks for a snack store for our movie at the end of the school year. I show Hidden Figures at the end of the school year every year, and I wanted to provide snacks that students could buy for that. There were 2 things I enjoyed about having a classroom store. One is I actually ended up having some students create their own stores and bring things in to sell. So whether it was origami things, I had some students sell art, I had a student sell candy, I had a student sell pencils. Oh, that is one thing I did put in my store is I put pencils and notebooks and other school supplies that my school had given me. I put those things in the store as well. But my students became entrepreneurs in and of themselves and sold things within their classroom to gain bonuses for themselves. The second thing I really liked was I didn't have to put any effort into this necessarily. I just had to make sure I had stuff printed and ready to go to stock this classroom store. And with this, I only had it open once a week on Wednesdays. This made it a lot less to handle because I was only having to deal with it once a week. So my goal for next year is to find more passes I can put in my store for students to buy. I have no ideas yet, so if you have some, please send them my way. I just want to have more options for students to purchase things. Stimulate the economy, you know? And pillar number 5 is the platform I use to host all of this and do all the transactions for me. I used stash101.com. It's super easy to create a teacher's account. Everything is free. There's no paid upgrades. Everything is free. And as a teacher who didn't want to spend any money, that is definitely in my budget. I did watch some tutorials on how to set it up effectively, but it's super simple. There isn't a lot to it, but there is a lot that you can do with it. It creates bank accounts for students. It has that 101 wheel that I was talking about because it's Stash 101, hence the 101 wheel. Students can purchase things there. They can invest in a 401k. You can have taxes come out of their paycheck. There is a lot you can do with this platform. And on the teacher platform, you can group students into class periods. You can go into each account and change things if you need to. You have a lot of flexibility with this. And my favorite part is they have a whole financial literacy course that corresponds to what happens within the Stash 101. So you can teach your students about bank accounts, about investing, about saving, about credit cards, student loans. It's a lot of important things that students need to learn, and this is an opportunity for you to incorporate that into your regular curriculum. One thing I found challenging about using Stash 101 was that the 101 wheel glitched sometimes and wouldn't give students the opportunity to spin it, and there wasn't a way for me to fix that. Maybe it was something on my end, but there aren't a lot of settings for me to have done something wrong. So just know that if you use this platform and the 101 wheel glitches, there may not be a whole lot you can do to fix it for that student. Overall, I had a really enjoyable experience using Stash 101. And it's kind of crazy because I was planning on recording this episode today and I had a teacher meeting earlier today. And this teacher from another school was doing a classroom economy, but using the platform Class Equity. Now, I know nothing about this platform, but when I went to the website and kind of researched what it was about, they had the 4 pillars that I was talking about directly on their website. They talked about classroom jobs, rent and utilities, bonuses and fines, and a classroom store. So I thought that was pretty cool that they had the exact 4 things that I wanted in my classroom on their website. So it seems like it's a pretty cool system that you can use for you and your students. So if you are planning to create a classroom economy next year for your students, take a look at Stash 101, play around with Class Equity, see what works for you. There is also this other website called myclassroomeconomy.org, I believe, that has a lot of lesson plans and ideas for you. It doesn't have an online program that I saw, but it does have some free curriculum options for you. All in all, my experience doing a classroom economy was very nice and I enjoyed the outcomes I had. I had a lot of students learn about money and how expensive things are, and it tied into the end of the year budget project I did with my students that you probably have heard them talk about before. And with that, there's a lot that I want to change for next year. We always got to adapt and improve to make things the best for our students and for ourselves. If this was something that you enjoyed hearing or learning about, please let me know by sending me a message on Instagram, or better yet, screenshot this episode on whatever platform you are using, post it to your Instagram stories, and tag me. I want to hear what you enjoyed so I know if I should keep talking about this or if you're like, go back to the other stuff, please. I want to make sure that this podcast is for you and what you want to hear and learn about. And with that, my goal is this summer to put out blog posts about how I created this, what platforms I used, what jobs I did, because that was the hardest part to start this whole thing, was what jobs do I do for 30 students? So I will have everything in blog posts throughout the summer, so feel free to check those out as you start your journey in discovering if a classroom economy is right for you and your students. And with that, I'll catch you later. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. To find all the links and resources to things talked about in this episode, head on over to MissKuipersClassroom.com and click on podcast.